Sometimes the most amazing finds are where you least expect them. Like, for example, if you drive about 4 hours west of Chicago, you'll find a collection of hundreds of motorcycles. Hondas, Suzukis, BMWs, BSAs, Triumphs, of course Harleys, and even a couple of flying Merkles. Bikes that used to race on board tracks back in the 1910s. You can see them up close in almost showroom floor condition. Or at least you would have. Unfortunately, the National Motorcycle Museum has permanently closed its doors, which is a tragedy in its own right. And the motorcycles have, well, okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. But before it disappears, we take a trip out to check out the museum and witness this impressive display of motorcycle history. This is the National Motorcycle Museum. I'm your host, Mark Long, and you're listening to Driven to Ride. Anamosa, Iowa. A town of almost 5,500 people and a couple of hundred motorcycles in what's one of the best uses of an old Walmart that I can think of. It's the National Motorcycle Museum, started by John Parham, the guy who founded J&P Cycles, and sadly passed away in 2017. His wife Jill took over the museum then, and you know what? Let's let her tell the story.
So this motorcycle museum was actually in Sturgis, South Dakota.
Right, okay.
And it resided in half of the J&P Cycles store that we owned out there. And that was pegged to close down because it was very small scale. And nobody wanted to run it. They couldn't find anybody to manage it. It needed money, the whole thing, like all museums.
Right.
Anyway, so my husband in 2001 said, we were on the board of directors, but with it being in our store, and he said, well, we're taking this on. We'll take on the debt, we'll take it on, and see what we can do with it. I don't know what I wanted to do with him at that point, because we were so busy with J&P Cycles at that time, we didn't have time to do it. And so he tried to run it from Sturgis for a while, actually out of Anamosa, and that didn't work. And so we moved it back here, and we moved it to a building down on Main Street in Anamosa. And we eventually accumulated 200 bikes. Okay. And some of it being his bikes, of course, and some of it on loan, in different, so it was just building. And so, and we owned the building that this museum is in currently, and we used it for J&P Cycles tire warehouse. Okay. And so he kept buying bikes and putting them in the museum, and pretty soon we were out of room. And so he said, I'm just going to tell J&P Cycles they need to get a different warehouse, and we're going to move the museum into this 36,000 square foot building. Yeah. Well, those 200 motorcycles got lost in here, of course. We did huge displays, and we had a lot of people working to help us do that. And eventually, John kept collecting, and his passion, he grew even stronger for the history. And so we ended up having 550 bikes here at one point in time.
John's son, Zach, put it in a slightly more colorful way.
It was kind of like my dad's dream to just build something, almost like the Field of Dreams, build it and they will come, right? Right. And so it started out as a smaller building downtown Anamosa, and then it moved out to it's an old Walmart building. At its peak at over 500 motorcycles, it still has over 350 or 400 motorcycles right now. So it's a great collection of really all bikes, right? It's a great collection of, obviously the American bikes, your Harleys, your Indians, and then all those one-offs, the Merkles, the Sears Roebucks, the Thors. But what I think it makes unique to some of the other museums in the nation is it does have a lot of the European bikes, BSAs, Vincents. There's a large collection of those. And then it has a decent collection of the Japanese bikes. So I think when you go to other museums, you're not pigeonholed, but, there very few have all of it, right? And so I think that's what made it unique in its day.
So John wanted to have a bike for every era. He wanted to.
So he's always been a collector, kind of.
Yeah, he became a huge collector, and he's always been interested in vintage bikes, and so it was just something he just loved. And so he wanted to have a bike in here for people to come in and say, I used to ride that when I was young. That was my first bike. He loved to have people just stand there and see their first bike, so it was bikes of all makes and models. He didn't just do Harley Davidson,
right.
Yeah. And so he just continued, and till his death in 2017, he still was collecting.
Yeah. Was there ever a point where you were like, okay, John, that's enough?
Oh,
or were you just supportive?
He didn't necessarily always tell me that there was bikes coming in. And so that's kind of our little joke, I guess. But yes, he didn't want me to say it's enough. And so he'd rather just not tell me. And
right.
But I really have enjoyed him all my life with him.
You've got an amazing collection of really the history. And that was something that you kind of touched on a little bit, is that John really wanted to show the history almost of the inception from the motorcycle, from the very beginning all the way to the modern day.
And he didn't do it just in motorcycles. He did it in memorabilia.
Sure.
He was a toy collector. He loved art. And we had a great friend that did bronzes, and so he bought every bronze and had it in here.
Wow.
Most of them are gone right now because I kept those. There is a few in the auction, but so he wanted to do every part of the motorcycle history. I mean, every part of it, and with great signs, and he's got a lot of great signs in here also.
Yeah, you guys don't have a blank wall, I think, in this whole area. So. But just because you build it, and even if they do come to visit, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to like what you're doing.
When we started, things were, we were probably the most, I hate to use the word hated people in Anamosa,
Really?
but, back in 1979, you didn't want motorcycles coming to the town.
They had a bad rap. Exactly.
They had a bad rap.
Yeah.
And so we were like, oh my gosh, they're bringing all these bikers to town. And we weren't loved at that point in time.
Right, interesting.
And, the cops were all on guard and everything. It was kind of funny. And then we grew and we became a huge business, and they couldn't get enough of motorcycles in town. And the funny part about it is, with the J&P Cycles moving their warehouse and stuff out of here in Anamosa and having just a small retail, there hasn't been probably as many bikes in town until now that I'm closing the museum. And now that roar is coming down the highway again, and I just love listening to it. It reminds me of the old days of J&P Cycles. Yeah.
Which brings us here to the sad fact that the National Motorcycle Museum is closing its doors for good. Even as you take in all the details of Vincent's, Flying Merkles, Harleys, Triumphs, Kawasaki's, you can't help but notice the auction tags hanging from the handlebars. Why is this happening? How did we get here?
My parents have been the front door of the National Motorcycle Museum for a long time, really since it moved to Anamosa, to be honest. It's ebbed and flowed, but it was a board decision to close it. Obviously, my mom and myself are on the board. But really what it is my mom wanted to retire, and the largest donor of the National Motorcycle Museum really didn't want to be the donor anymore, right? Now
Sure.
she happened to also own a very large portion of the collection that's being shown. But really what it is it's a sad thing. I think if the museum wouldn't have, don't get me wrong, my dad built it and they will come. They just didn't all come, right? And so, and that's I think if that museum would have been, in Milwaukee or in Chicago even, and even if it was in the Midwest, but a bigger city,
Sure,
it probably would have been fine, right? But it happens to be in a town of 5,000 people, and it's a beautiful town, but doesn't necessarily get the traffic to help fund that museum. So that's really why it's closing. Is it a sad? Yeah, I think it is. I think you could take it two ways. I think the really cool thing is how many people have come this year.
Yeah.
That's the really cool thing, right? So we announced in January, and I think she's had more attendance this year than she's had in a few years, right? And so to see all the people coming is pretty cool.
What was kind of, the reaction? You said you've gotten a lot of support and more people this year. When you first announced it, what was some of the reaction like?
People were like kind of maybe appalled a little bit that I was even going to do that and split this collection up. And, I think they thought I'd run it forever. But, I've been working since I was, 13 years old. I'd like to stop. And so, I think I shocked people. I'll be honest. I think I really shocked people. I think they thought I'd just keep it going. And, it's been here for so long. I know that John would be in support of me probably shutting this down now. He was probably glad that I gave it 6 years, 6.5 years after he passed, because I don't think he probably thought I was going to do that. So I think he's good with what I'm doing. And I know that he hopes that these bikes go to some good homes. Yeah.
And unfortunately, the ripples of the museum closing won't just be felt inside of the old Walmart either.
It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt the town, you know what I mean? Because this here actually draws people in for the main street, you know what I mean, which is pretty much the town here in Anamosa, you know. So it's I don't know. I think that when this place is gone, it's really going to hurt. It's going to hurt. I was here about 3 or 4 days ago, and then I usually come about once a month, so there's always more stuff to see. Every one of these bikes, I mean, you got to think so much brain power has gone into them, so it's like history disappearing, you know, when this place closes, so...
Even if the National Motorcycle Museum is in what some may call a little past the middle of nowhere, it's still amazing to check out. Plus, that's where the Parhams call home.
That I could have shut it down when John passed in 2017, but I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, I kept it going. I just kept thinking that his memory was here and his passion was here. And I thought I'll just keep trying and see if I can maybe turn this around to be financially stable, but I couldn't. And, you know, there's different places that we could have moved it to, but, you know, this is our hometown. And, we wanted to keep it here. So, and I don't regret that at all. Mm-hmm. It's been, you know, fun. Yeah, there's. Good, yeah. I love talking to the people. They're, you know, it's my favorite part of J&P Cycles when we owned it was the rally that we had out there and all the people coming and all the customers that you got to see and talk to. And the same happened when we were in Sturgis, and I loved working the floor out there and talking to customers. Well, that's been the greatest part about this is meeting people and talking to them, and they've come from all over. All over, yeah.
And motorcyclists the world over know what to find in Anamosa.
Steve Winson. I'm from Derby, central England. Just think Robin Hood, and we're up the road.
Jem Doward. I'm actually from North Nottingham, and I live in the village where Maid Marian and Robin Hood supposedly got married.
Yeah, it's Nick Woodhead from Chesterfield, Derbyshire, UK, England. And the premise of... We came over a few years ago, some mutual friends. Steve did mention that this museum's closing down, so we thought we've got to go see this because it's going to be a last chance to see. Yeah. So this is the main part of our 2-week trip, and it's just a fantastic place. It's a shame that it's closing down. But
what do you guys think of the museum? First of all, what are your first impressions?
I wish I was loaded and buy everything.
Yeah, we deliberately made sure we won't go home before the auction, so we can't buy anything. Yeah. But it's a fantastic place, and it's a shame it's going.
Stunning. It's better than I expected, to be honest. Standard of some of the bikes, the actual collection as well.
See, I invited you.
Yeah, invited me, bugger off. It's the amount of different bikes you've got. I mean, it's like things like the old Triton. My brother-in-law, unfortunately, he's now not with me, but he had one of those, and it was fantastic. And it's just bringing back memories.
There's so many bikes. Knuckles, the Excelsiors, so many bikes. I can't just pick one out.
I have a Sunbeam S7, just like the Sunbeam, same colour, green one.
Really?
That's a 50. I've got a 53.
Wow, that's got to be cool to see it, you know, over here in America, and also just in that clean of a condition. Is yours that clean?
No.
No, definitely not.
And those aren't the only international visits that Jill's gotten at the museum. Where's maybe the farthest somebody's come from?
We had people from France and Holland in here,
okay.
Yeah, okay. And Germany and Australia the other day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've
okay.
had people from all over. It's funny. I love watching their faces when they come in because I think they don't realize that it's as big as it is, you know. And we've still got a nice collection in here, and it's in place the way that it's going to be for the auction. Mm-hmm. Meekum's leaving it just the way it is right now, and they're having a big tent outside with a big screen in it, and so this museum will be intact the way it is right now during the auction. Yeah.
Some folks even came for a visit to the museum from just down the road. Well, compared to England.
I've always wanted to come, and I've got a coffee bunch of guys grouped together, and we talk about this, and some have been here and some haven't, and now I'm here. When I was 14, I had a Harley Hummer, and I drove it to school in Nebraska because I could get a school permit through the county, through the state. And my dad and my mom also used that to go to cornfields where we were irrigating corn and my mom loved it. She just, yeah. I took the head off. I, of course, serviced it. It was a 2-cycle. I repainted it, played with it. I took it in the cow pasture, and I climbed hills with it, which it really wasn't a hill climbing bike, but cow trails, and I just always had fun with it. And I would drive it around the yard, even in wintertime, just for recreation.
Cool. Well, yeah, and you said your wife has a story on a dirt bike, I heard, off-road. Tell me about it.
Yeah, off-road, that's right. We had moved to Nebraska, and I was a teacher. And so Calvin said, let's drive around in the country. So every Sunday, we'd take his dirt bike, and we'd go out on country roads, and he would tell me, this is where so-and-so lives, and this is where so-and-so. So I got to know the whole area because I had just moved there, and he had grown up there. But anyway, one day we were heading on his bike, and all of a sudden, off to the side, we saw 2 Doberman dogs, huge dogs, and they were coming at us. And he tried to get the dirt bike to go as fast as it could, but it was a like sound.
Yeah.
And those dogs almost got us.
Really?
And we barely made it. Yeah. But then he drove me on into the middle of a section that turned, and there was a beautiful cemetery. Farmers Valley Cemetery. So because of that motorcycle, I fell in love with an old historical cemetery. So good things happen on a motorcycle.
So what's going to happen to the motorcycles?
I'm hoping that these bikes, I'm hoping some museum maybe comes in and buys some of the nicer ones, that they want on display in their museum. Or if you wanted to just start a collection and you were just getting into it and you had the money, what a better place to come and start with 10 bikes or 5 bikes or whatever. And, some of these bikes need to be ridden, the Vincents and the BMWs, and they can be ridden and enjoyed instead of sitting here, with people looking at them. So I'm really hoping that they go to great homes, and I think there's going to be a great crowd here, and I'm hoping that I know most of the people, and I'm excited about it. But it is going to be emotional for me.
Yeah, it's going to be a long couple of days.
Yeah, be a long couple of days, yeah.
I actually think we will see some of the bikes not stay in the United States. I actually think they may not be in person for the auction, but I actually do think we'll have a decent amount of auction folks that aren't necessarily stateside bidding on the bikes next week. So, which is good and bad. I mean, I don't necessarily want them to leave the United States, but the same thing is they're going to a good home, right? I mean, if you're shipping a bike over to England, it's going to go to a good home, right? So, I think so I think we'll see that also. And what's different about this auction, maybe to even EJ Cole's, that was done in 2011 or 12, is it's got like an airplane in it. It's got a flat track. It's got a bunch of things that are not necessarily just motorcycle. A ton of bicycles, a ton of toys, right? And so I think you're going to get a vast variety of people. I mean, that's one thing my dad was good at, was collecting. I think you're going to get a decent amount of people that are different. I don't think it's going to be like a one person come in and buy it all by any means. I think you'll have guys or groups or even museums that come in and buy a decent chunk to help their museum. And I think that's Mika asked me the same question. Are you sad? I'm like, no, I'm not sad. I mean, because obviously my whole point of my dad's thing was these to get seen. And so the whole goal of this is, we're really closing the museum because people weren't seeing them, right? Like the whole goal was for people to see the history. And so I think this is a good chance for that to happen again.
Jill and Zach aren't letting every single bike go to auction, though. They've picked a few special ones to hold on to. And that includes one bike in particular that Jill and Zach would never, ever let go. Probably because it's got just as rich of a history as J&P Cycles does. So you said you're keeping 10 bikes. I imagine one of them is the yellow Harley. Can you tell us kind of the story of the yellow Harley? Because I feel like that kind of illustrates the story of J&P Cycles.
The yellow panhead came to us in probably about 1978 1980 maybe. And John was just starting to get into vintage motorcycles then, and he had a few and sold a few. And then he said, I just love this 1955 Panhead that this guy has in Ohio. And I said, we had just moved to a new house, and, you know, we were just starting out. We were just newly married, you know, by 5 years, and no children yet. And he's like, I know we don't have much money, but we're getting our income tax back, and if we could just use that to buy this bike. And I'm like, that'd be all of our income tax. That'd be it. And I gave in. And so we traveled to Ohio to get the bike, and it was going to be $2,500. When we got there, the guy said, you misunderstood. It's $3,000. And we only had $2,500. And we already had slept in the van that night on a side street in this town because we didn't have enough money to have a hotel. And we're looking at him. We're so disappointed. And he said, you know what? You guys are good people. I can tell. And so I'm going to trust you for the $500. And so he trusted us and let us take that bike. So that bike became a bike that we both rode on. It's got a huge solo seat on it, but we rode it together, and lots of miles on that with us. Then it went on display at J&P Cycles when we owned it, and we needed money for payroll, and so we had to sell it to get money for payroll. And so we sold it for $10,000, and we got money for payroll. And the guy said, I'm going to hold it for you, and you can buy it back at what point you're able to. Wow. Well, 2 years went by, and we ended up buying it back for $20,000, which is only fair, I guess.
He didn't say what the price was going to be.
No, he didn't say what the price was going to be.
Value,
But so it kind of became the J&P bike because it's been around the block a few times, I guess.
Yeah, and it's been restored a couple of times,
and it's been restored because it was in our fire in 1984 when we had our fire at J&P Cycles, and it got burnt up, and so we had to restore it then.
How badly was it?
It was more the paint and everything. I mean, and but then John decided, well, I might as well just get everything it needs, of course, and so he fully restored it then.
Yeah. If you're going to do it, you got to do it right.
So I have to keep that bike. It'll sit in my house.
Yeah, I imagine is that going to be like a family heirloom? Maybe go down to the kids or the grandkids?
My grandson already thinks he wants it. I said you'll be able to get that, but I want to see you kick it over.
Oh, geez, yeah. So it still runs.
Yeah, it still runs.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's by far nothing special to most people, but to my mom and I, it means everything.
So can you tell me a couple other bikes that you're kind of keeping or some of your favorites?
So John, when E.J. Cole had his auction, John bought a 1911 Merkel, one of a kind.
You know, that 1911 original racer that my dad bought. My dad bought that bike really when he was dying, to be honest, right? I mean, and so it's got two memories, right?
I'm keeping that racer Merkel, and I'm a street Merkel, and a 36 BSA, and some board track bikes, and an Aramaki that we won an award on in Pebble Beach.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's a cute little bike.
It's a wide variety.
It's a wide variety. So, and an 08 strap tank. And so, I've got them displayed nicely. Yeah.
Oh, they're already
they're already out of there, except for the Panhead. That's going this week.
Watch out for the prying eyes around here and say, I know. Because there is, a mark for the Mecum auction on all everything that's for sale and everything. So I can only imagine you see something that's not for sale. That's the one that everybody crowds around.
Of course, they all wanted me to give up that Merkel and the 08 strap tank. But
I wanted to know a little bit more about the guy whose passion for motorcycles drove him to put this museum together. So I asked John's longtime friend, Dave Ort, who you may have seen on American Pickers, about what made John tick.
I met John at the chopper meets when he put the chopper meets on. I was very young. It was over 40 years ago.
Okay.
And in fact, he wasn't so much into the antique motorcycles then, and I was buying all these antique motorcycle parts that guys were building choppers, and he kind of dug that, and we became friends pretty quickly. And both jumped in with both feet. So I've known him a long time and bounced off each other with this stuff forever, really. He was so excited about putting his dream together in this big place, and it was so good.
Yeah, has John always been a collector kind of guy?
He that's a great question. The way I remember it, he didn't start collecting until he got interested into the antique motorcycles. And then it was like no holds barred, you know. It was like you went crazy with it. And J&P, you know, because that corporation did so well, he could bank buying all these bikes. You know, oh, I like that one. Okay, I'll take it, you know. He did ask my advice for a long time on some, you know, because you got to make sure you know what you're doing. And I was into it a little more than he was, but then he learned real quick.
Yeah, so kind of unofficial consultant really was your role.
Yeah, it's just a friend, you know. And he did make me curator, gave me this title, curator, for a long time, but, you know, it was just because we were friends and I helped out a lot. And when you have a passion like I do and he did, it's not about making money or anything. It's about this love for these things.
And that passion didn't go unnoticed either.
John Parham, in recognition of your achievements as the founder of J&P Cycles, one of the most successful motorcycle accessory businesses ever created, and later shepherding the National Motorcycle Museum into one of the world's leading motorcycle collections, it is my great honor to induct you into the AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. Especially like to thank the AMA Hall of Fame Museum and its board of directors and all the nominated and voting committees for selecting me this year. It's a great honor to be inducted in with so many other motorcycle enthusiasts and racers and people who have just dedicated their lives or their passion to motorcycling. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank my wife, Jill. She always supported me in all my many business adventures and promotions events and all the different harebrained schemes I've come up with, I guess. I was the one that could see the opportunities and made the cash register ring, but Jill was the one that dotted all the I's and crossed the T's. Without her, I would not be here tonight. And again, thank you so much for this wonderful award. It's just a great honor, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You know, he was so honored when he got inducted into that Hall of Fame. It was one of his highlights of his life, really. Yeah, it was one of the best honors he's ever had.
And both Jill and Zach have some very fond memories of John.
When we built the big building down in Ormond Beach, we decided that it would be cool to ride from Iowa to open that building up. And so we did that in October. And, you know, it was just a beautiful ride going down through the Smoky Mountains and everything. We took no interstates all the way. Yeah. And it was one of our favorite trips we ever took, you know. But we rode a lot just with groups of people, you know, and for a day, go out for a day or, you know, that kind of thing. But my husband and son have their memories of riding to Sturgis. So my son started riding behind John at the age of 12, and he could hardly wait to get his bike. And so, of course, he bought a Sportster, and he rode a Sportster all the way to Sturgis. Only a 16-year-old would do that. And so they rode. And my son's rode ever since then. He rides to Sturgis every year. Yeah. And so he's got 25 years under his belt of riding to Sturgis. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's got to be a lot of fun memories over there.
One of the coolest ones was when we were in Davenport one year and Willie G and his wife came to the booth and just sat down and talked to my dad. That was pretty cool. You know, like you see this idol that's, you know, basically brought Harley out of the AMD crunch, and like you think like, oh, this guy's a movie star type thing. And he just sat down and talked like there's nothing else. I mean, that'd be one of the things. When I was in high school, I'd help my dad on eBay. I was literally doing 5,000-6,000 transactions when I was a junior in high school for him on eBay. But we would buy bikes. I mean, I bought some of those Flying Merkles that you saw off eBay. You know, because that's, you know, even now. A lot of that happens on eBay, but back then it really happened, right? This was, 20 years ago. And so probably the hunt with my dad was pretty cool, right? Like going to find the parts or having him, because he wasn't as good on the internet as I was. So he'd have me go try to find the parts for him. A lot of those bikes that he has weren't didn't come whole, right? They were built by people like Dave and others that, would take portions of them, or, find married up gas tanks to the actual motors, and, and then find the frame, right? I mean, that's the hunt that most of these guys go through when they're picking. And so, doing that with my dad will always be a memory.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I mean, when you look at the bikes, you don't think about it. You don't think about the work that goes into them. You don't think about all the pieces that go into it. And God, having to find that stuff. I mean, some of that's probably like a one of one,
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And technically he owns some of those 101s that, even last year, my mom sold a Cyclone tank to a gentleman. My dad doesn't even own a Cyclone, but he owned the tank. Right. And so, and this guy basically had everything else but the tank. Right. And so you made that guy so he can go build that bike now. Right. So, I don't necessarily have the passion for the antique ones like my dad does, but I definitely love riding motorcycles. I mean, I've actually rode to Sturgis since I was 12 years old. I've only missed 1 year. Wow. So, and so most of that started when I was with my dad. Right. But yeah, I've rode 27 times to Sturgis in my lifetime. I mean, there's very few people that can even say that. Right. And definitely nobody under the age of 40. So, and so I have a passion for riding. That's what's, obviously I've worked for J&P Cycles now over 20 years myself, and the group I belong to now. But it's really a passion, right? You see that when you go to events, you see that when you go in the museum and see these people, right? They're either riding their motorcycles in, or they're like a 5-year-old in a candy shop when they walk in that museum, right? And that's the cool feeling you get, right? Is, oh my gosh, right? Like their eyes get big and they spend hours, and then they walk out saying like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even see everything. Can I come back?" Right? And that's what you hope, right? And that's why you do it. And so I definitely feel that passion still.
So what do you think it is about? I mean, you've been around motorcycles a long, long time. What do you think it is about motorcycles and motorcycling that got John so passionate that you decided to keep it going? What do you think it is about motorcycles that makes it so special?
I think it's just the people. We feel like these people, the industry people and the customers that we've met, they're just phenomenal people. I mean, they're so good, and that's part that we've enjoyed the most, probably. Is just we still keep up with all of them. I mean, even though I'm not at J&P Cycles anymore, I still have all those friends that I had at J&P Cycles. In fact, a lot of them are coming to the auction just to support me.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Yeah.
Which is fun. Yeah. And not that I'll have time for them, but, that I think that's probably been the best part, is just that they're such good people. They're just down-to-earth people. Yeah.
Friendliest people.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's where the story of the National Motorcycle Museum, at least as a place, has its end. And although it now may only live on as a memory, the legacy and the legend of John Parham lives on through his family and his motorcycles. What do you hope the legacy of the National Motorcycle Museum will be?
I mean, obviously, it's going to be a lot of great memories for people. Hopefully this collection, because not all the collection being sold next week is technically my parents', right? The National Motorcycle Museum has some bikes that are going to new homes. And really, I think the whole goal of it was to create memories, create stories, is really the goal of it. Obviously, my mom knows all the folks that own the major museums, Barber and Dale's old museum in North Carolina, right? So that his son's running now, Matt. So I hope some of them go there, either through them needing them or donations, right? I mean, some of these people that buy these bikes want to show them off. So I hope those other museums could benefit, obviously where people can see these bikes going forward.
It's time to pass the baton, so to speak, I feel like, and I hope this younger generation gets into it like I did when I was young. I just really hope that happens, and we'll see. Well, I think, everybody knew John and Jill. I mean, he built this huge corporation, for one thing, J&P Cycles. That was his baby. And they're always going to remember John and connect it with these antique motorcycles. They'll never be forgotten, and neither will this place. And I hope somebody continues it on, and you never know what happens at these auctions. One guy could buy it all, you know what I mean, and build his own museum. You never know.
What's next for you? You said you want to retire.
I want to retire. My grandchildren are getting older. They're 12 and 14, and so my grandson started high school this year.
Wow.
I want to be able to fly there and see them at a whim.
Yeah, why not?
Fly and see a game, or I have a direct flight to to Texas out of here, and I want to travel. I want to travel before I I'm unable to. You know? Yeah.
Are you going to stick around in Anamosa then?
I'll keep my house here, but I have a house in Florida that I certainly would like to use during those winter months that I hate so much now.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of my plan. And I don't have a good plan in place yet, but I know that after this is over with, I'm going to take a little vacation to relax.
Yeah, because, I mean, let's not forget you actually run this museum too and have for, a long time. So as Jill plans her well-deserved vacation, these bikes head to their new homes. In an email we got from Zach, he told us that while some bikes did go into private collections, quite a few are destined for prominent display in museums all around the world, including the Top Mountain Motorcycle Museum all the way in Austria. Guess it's time to pack our bags. In any case, it's safe to say the auction was a resounding success. A 1927 Brough Superior that sold for $220,000, a 1906 Curtis Twin for $214,000, a 1955 Vincent Black Prince that sold for $110,000. You get the idea. And judging from those prices, I'd say the motorcycles of the John Parham collection at the National Motorcycle Museum have some great new owners, and they'll be well cared for. Well, thank you so much, Jill, for talking with us. I hope everything goes well with the auction, and you can move on to the next chapter and ride into the sunset.
I just call it turning the page.
That's right, turning the page. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Driven to Ride. Interact with us and check out full unedited conversations, photos, interviews, video interviews, plus other goodies on YouTube or Instagram at Driven to Ride Podcast. Or you can check us out at driventoridepodcast.com. And make sure you leave us a rating and review from wherever you get your podcasts, too. Do you have an idea for an episode or a guest, or you want to invite us out on an adventure? Email us, hello@driventoridepodcast.com. Driven to Ride is wholly owned by Flint Rock LLC, made possible with help from Matthew Miles, and written, hosted, and produced by me, Mark Long. We'll see you out there.